bringing sports, entertainment, and technology podcasts together. This is SPNT.
Irish Impact is brought to you by Stitcher Smart Radio. Download the Stitcher Smart Radio app today at stitcher.com/SPNT. What's happening, Irish fans? It is Irish Impact here on the SPNT Podcast Network. Notre Dame 4-0 for the first time in 10 years with a beatdown, a physical beatdown. Well, maybe not a beatdown, but it was a dominating game by the defense against the Michigan Wolverines, a 13-6 victory. I'm joined alongside my co-host, Money Dubs, Kevin Werner. What's happening, bud?
Defensive domination. That's all you can say about that ball game.
That was I'm shocked. You know, we haven't given up a touchdown to the state of Michigan this year. It's really nice to say that.
Play both those schools, both top 25 teams. At the time, Michigan's fallen out since, and only give up 9 points. Pretty impressive.
The Denard Robinson show never really got off the ground. Well, it did, except it went into the hands of Notre Dame players all night, Saturday night, which was a sight to see. We've been waiting for how many years to finally get a piece of him?
Yeah, he's amassed over almost 1,000 yards in the last 2 games against the Irish. This year, the defense came to play, forced him to turn it over 5 times. And I know you called that last week. And it was just, the defensive was so impressive because Robinson, he could not get in rhythm. He threw those interceptions. His mobility was there, but it was contained. And he ended up having a fumble when they were one chance when they did threaten to score in the second half on a drive. And that front four was in his face all night.
Well, we've got a lot to talk about this week here on Irish Impact. Episode 6, obviously we'll talk about the win over Michigan in South Bend. We'll also be joined a little bit later on by Ryan Ritter of herloyalsons.com. He's also known on Twitter as @HLS_NDTex. Or might even be TexND. I have to get that right. I do apologize, Ryan, if you're listening. But we'll be joined by him a little bit later on to discuss the news that dropped today regarding the Michigan-Notre Dame series going forward. Looks like 2014 will be the last time that the Notre Dame Fighting Irish play Michigan, at least for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, I mean, they originally did have a deal in place to go up until 2031 with a break in there in 2018 and 2019, but it looks like now they're just going to play 2 more times, and the last of them being in 2014 back in Notre Dame Stadium. So, I mean, one of Notre Dame's biggest rivals, this thing comes to an end, and it all has to do with that joining of the ACC we've talked about.
Yeah, we had a feeling that might do some stuff to some of the traditional rivals.
Of course,
but
yeah.
I guess it is what it is, right?
Yeah, I mean, Michigan and Notre Dame have been going at it, forever, and it's going to be interesting to lose them. I'm unfortunate. I like playing Michigan. I think it's a really great rivalry. But it looks like the way college football is heading, Notre Dame kind of starting to lean in towards a conference. This is what's going to happen.
We'll touch on that a lot later on when we hook up with Ryan Ritter again from herloyalsons.com, Notre Dame blog. And, of course, we want to hear your thoughts. Make sure you email us at irishimpact@spnt.tv. You can also give us a follow on Twitter. We are at Irish Impact. So let's dig a little deeper here, Kev. You're right. I did call it. In our bold prediction segment last week, I said that the Fighting Irish defense would force Michigan into 5 or more turnovers. I didn't say it was 5 interceptions, but I did say
well, I mean, Robinson had 5 turnovers.
Right.
They had 6 total because early on in the ball game, and this was a sign you could tell that they were kind of scared of the Irish because they pulled out the tricks early.
Very early.
And when they were driving down early in the ball game, went with a halfback pass, picked off in the end zone. And that was, was a good sign to start the ball game, get that turnover and stop. Notre Dame had a lot of great stops throughout the night. But, yeah, Michigan playing a little scared, it looked early, because they were going to the trick plays. And Notre Dame was just ready for them, something they hadn't been the last 2 seasons.
You're right. As soon as I saw when you have your running back throwing the ball instead of your elite quarterback, it reeks of uncertainty. Like they didn't know how to. They were using misdirection and trick plays, a la Mark D'Antonio with the fake field goal in overtime, that sort of thing. You catch them off guard.
What they had wasn't going to be enough, so they had to try a couple tricks, and they did in the ball game. But then as the game progressed, it was just the Notre Dame defense again. I'm going to keep saying that. I mean, we saw Robinson. He ended up with about 90 rushing yards, but all that really in between the 20s, and then all those interceptions that he would throw, and then the fumble. I mean, that all made up for whatever progress he was able to have. I mean, they held him to just 138 passing yards with the 4 interceptions, 13 for 24, and then on the ground, I said he had 90 yards with 26 carries. I mean, he's always been their offense, and he just was not able to produce for them on Saturday.
And this is the same thing that happened, I would say, a year ago up in Ann Arbor. They really wanted to make Robinson more of a pocket passer. This is the Michigan coaching staff. Mm-hmm. And then they realized it's not working. We need to get him mobile. We didn't see that Saturday night. I mean, he had some yards, but really the front four, they kept contained. They didn't get out of their lanes. They really forced him to stay in the pocket. And we saw what happened. It was 5 straight passes, 5 consecutive passes.
He's never been a great quarterback in the sense of having a passing arm. He's just been able to make things work because everyone was so afraid he would run the football when Notre Dame kept him in the pocket, as you said, and he had to throw downfield. Those balls were not accurate. Monte Teo with 2 picks in the ball game. I mean, Notre Dame just forced him to throw, and he could not do it Saturday night in Notre Dame Stadium.
It was – I have never seen, and maybe you have, but I have never seen a team drop back 5 consecutive times because it was 5 consecutive pass attempts were intercepted by Notre Dame. That's unbelievable.
Yeah, and it was amazing for the way they were playing because the way the defense won this ball game for the Irish without a doubt because the offense was only able to put up 13 points. When if I told you last week we were going to score 13 points against Michigan, you'd say, yeah, well, you wouldn't think we'd win.
Right.
Yeah. Because, man, it was just the offense couldn't get going. And let's get into that a little bit because now here we go again, quarterback carousel.
I don't think it is.
I don't think it is either.
I mean, at least the way Coach Kelly after the game and what he has said going forward, that Everett's their guy, but clearly the occasion was bigger than what he was prepared for.
And Tommy Rees was able to come in and manage the game for what he had to do. 8 for 11, $115, and then he had a touchdown run on the ground, which is one thing we could have never predicted. Which quarterback would have a rushing touchdown in the Notre Dame Michigan game? And Tommy Rees would be the answer.
He would have been last on it. I would have taken Hendricks way over that.
I'll tell you what, I bet somewhere, though, in the second half when Golson was on the bench, Michigan might have taken him.
Yeah. Yeah. That was it was bizarre. But, once Tommy came in, it was almost like there was a sense of calm. Now, I wouldn't say he played great. He managed the game. He didn't turn it over. And he allowed what has been their bread and butter all season, and that is we'll move the ball on our own, I don't know what you want to call it, our own pace. We're going to get it on the ground. We're not going to, throw for first downs like we normally do. Let's ground and pound. And occasionally, it's okay to punt. Turk has been doing now he had some bad punts Saturday night, but he has been doing a fantastic job all year. And let's let our defense win ball games, and sure enough, I mean that's exactly what happened.
And you have to admit, Everett Golson had his chances. He came in there, threw 2 interceptions early, but they didn't pull him for a while, and the offense was really just stalled completely, not getting anything done. And then I think the way the defense was playing and getting the football, and the score still being as low as it was, Coach Kelly said, we got to make a change, and they had to bring Tommy in there, and it worked out.
For a team that had as many turnovers in the first half, I was concerned that the game was still a 1-score game.
I mean, it was that's what it was till the end.
And you got to give credit to Michigan's defense.
Greg Madison called a great game.
They were put in situations where they had a short field, and they forced Notre Dame into punts, and they kept the I think they attempted 1 field goal, 2 field goals. That's how they got 13. No, 3 field goals.
Yeah.
My math skills. You can tell I didn't go to Notre Dame.
2.
You're right.
2 and a touchdown, sir.
It's been a long. Oh my goodness. Either way, to hold Notre Dame to 13 points with 6 turnovers, got to give kudos to Michigan. I know that's not what we want to do here, but they called a great game, and
I mean, it was obviously a game of defense on both sides of the ball. I mean, but for Michigan, they played well defensively. They just had more turnovers. Notre Dame just with the 2, and they were early enough that they were able to rise above that. And again, more back just the offense and Tommy Reese coming in there, doing what he had to do. I mean, they were, like you said, trying to run the ball. They only threw 11 times with him. I mean, he was 8 completions, none bigger than one late when he finally hit Eifert to kind of seal the deal. The pass we've been waiting for almost 3 weeks, because Eifert has gone without a catch since the Purdue game.
First
going
half
into
of
this
the Purdue
one.
game.
Yeah, because he sat out that half, missed at Michigan State, not a catch, and then here against
59
Michigan.
minutes against
Yeah.
Michigan. So when you go back and you look from the first pass play of the game for Notre Dame, interception in your own territory, to now we go with Rees, the last possession, the last throw of the game, beautiful touch pass over the defender, great throw to Eifert.
It was I think it was out of an audible too, because Eifert finally was in single coverage, something he hadn't been in all against Michigan State and then against Michigan, and that was finally there. Rees saw it, took advantage of it, threw the ball on the money, and that's what they were looking for. And that, because up until that moment, this game was not over.
Not over, and still, I am stunned that this Notre Dame secondary, and kudos to Manti Te'o also with the 2 picks, one of them on a deflection, but still that was deflected by somebody in the secondary. Zeke Mata had a great game. The secondary, and we went into this year early in the season, we said that the secondary was going to be the big question, and really there have been no problems.
Well, that was
the Navy game.
Yeah.
After that, there has been nothing.
That was the big question, like you said, because they didn't know who was. It was just a lot of inexperience back there, and then the guys that did have experience were quickly injured, and it was just a lot of fresh faces back there, and we weren't sure what to expect. And you just assume new guys coming in, stepping up. You don't know if they're going to be ready for the challenge, especially with this Notre Dame schedule. And they've thus far proved us completely wrong, and they're playing lights out back there.
Bennett Jackson, interception. Nicky Barati, the freshman, getting the big pick at the goal line on the halfback pass, which, by the way, was a terrible throw. But when you consider they lost Slaughter and Lowood to begin the year, now I would say I'm if that's the one position group I would be the most impressed with here through the first 4 games, without a doubt.
Yeah, it's really stepped up. It'll be interesting to see how they do as the schedule advances, because there are going to be some teams like with Stanford and USC coming up. They're going to throw the ball more.
Oklahoma?
Yeah, Oklahoma's in there.
They're pretty good.
I mean, again, we can do this every week. We
Right.
do it every week. The schedule is brutal, but 4-0 now for just the 4th time in 30 seasons, and you have to be happy. And it's a good time for the Irish, too, to head into that bye week.
So now that we don't really have a game to predict or call this weekend, let's talk a little bit about the polls here. I'm not a big believer in these things, but it's cool. It's good for recruiting. Obviously, the Irish got a huge verbal commitment over the weekend from Torrey Hunter Jr., which is big news. But I have a feeling that before the season, we talked about this with the Rick Riley article about Notre Dame is I don't know, they're past that stage of being the glorious team in the country. You know, their luster has lost. They've lost their luster.
Mm-hmm.
Took me 15,000 words to get there, but I got there. I'm afraid now that they're 4-0, everybody's riding high on these guys. Now we go into Miami, and there's a letdown.
Well,
Then you got Oklahoma. Then you got Stanford. Then you got, I mean, it's setting us up for that. Oh, here we go again.
2 weeks in a row on primetime television, big wins over top 25 opponents. One, Michigan State, was ranked in the top 10 when they played them. And now they're going to this big game in Chicago. It's going to be at Soldier Field playing the U in that Shamrock Classic game, where they're going to bust out those special uniforms. And that's going to be another one, primetime game, and everyone's going to be watching, and everyone's getting back into Notre Dame after writing them off early on in the year.
Miami is a team that you cannot sleep on. We saw what they did over the weekend in Georgia at Georgia Tech, down really late. I think they were down by 21 or something crazy like that, and they ended up coming back and winning the game in overtime, 42 points.
Well, I mean, they're not the U of the late 80s, and they're not the U that was the national champs a little over a decade ago, but they're definitely not a pushover. That's a big-time football school.
Are they the U that we played a couple years ago in the bowl game?
I'm not. I mean, they're kind of. I think they can be. There's probably right around there, same kind of team. But I mean, it's not going to be. It's not going to be easy. I don't think it ever is with this schedule.
So, are you concerned about a letdown?
I'm just concerned that the team has. I mean, this is another.
Is it too high? Are they rated too high?
I think now with these 2 wins, putting them where they're at 10 now. Yeah, I think that's okay because they've beaten 2 top 25 opponents at the time. Now again, Michigan's fallen out since they've now got their second
And
loss.
Michigan State struggled with Eastern Michigan. Eastern.
But I mean, 4-0 through that so far. I mean, if you don't have them in the top 10, which they are at the bottom, I mean, how much farther would you take them down?
I'd still say top 20, but I don't know. 10 is up there. I mean, you look at some of the names that they're around. I still think Oklahoma's better than Notre Dame. I think Oklahoma's behind the Irish. I think I'd have to look at the standings, but I'm concerned because everybody's all talking about the Irish again, and here we go. Like that's what I'm concerned about.
I mean, it's reminiscent of a decade ago when it was Tyrone Willingham's first season, and the Irish started with a great run. I think they got up to 8-0 before they finally had a loss. But they were, 4-0 for the first time since that year. Very similar in the sense as well that it's the all defense. Back then, they could not seem to put points up on the board. Their defense carried them in 0-2, and that's looking that way right now as they've kind of struggled as of late in the last 2 games where the offense didn't really produce what they expected. Right. The field goal kicking is really consistent. That's something that hasn't been there before, so that's nice. But, they're going to have to, with the schedule and these teams and now the pressure, they're going to have to somehow figure out a way to get more points on the board for each of these ball games. 13 is not going to keep cutting it.
No, but it was a rivalry game, and it was against Michigan, and you know how that goes. I mean, they're familiar with one another. It's a shame that we're going to see that series go here in the future, and we'll touch on that story here in just a minute. Before we do that, let's do our shout-outs. And, of course, my audio computer doesn't want to work. Let's try this again. No? You don't want to play for me? That's awesome.
Shout-outs!
Wow. That is just – okay. Kevin, who's your shout-outs this week?
Shout-out for this week goes out to John Fitter, at John Fitter on Twitter. He's a new follower of ours, and we hope you tune in, listen, and go Irish.
I'm also going to give a shout-out to Steven. You can give him a follow at NDIrishFan_72. And I'm also going to give a shout-out to a friend of mine, Chris Nye. He is a huge Notre Dame fan. In fact, the one time I've had a chance to watch a game with him was in Windsor, Canada, the same day that Michigan lost to Appalachian State.
Wow.
That was the Demetrius Jones experiment that lasted a week.
Shortly followed by the Rich Rod experiment at Michigan.
Don't forget, you can rate and review the show on iTunes. We'd love to hear your feedback, whether it's good or bad, so make sure you do that. Check us out. We're in the iTunes directory. We're also in the Zune Marketplace. You can also check us out on Stitcher Smart Radio as well. We'd love to hear your feedback, and make sure you also send us your emails. We are at irishimpact@spnt.tv. We're going to hook up with Ryan Ritter here in just a bit. Kev, let's the news today. Michigan and Notre Dame, the Fighting Irish apparently are exercising their 3-year out and have decided to go away with the Michigan series. Are you surprised?
Well, I mean, like we said, it's just because they're already with this whole ACC thing coming. It's just going to be a matter of they're having to guarantee now 5 games in that conference. It just gives them the inability to exercise the schedule like they want to. I mean, would they probably want to keep playing Michigan? I mean, if they didn't have this new deal coming down the road. But what happens now is they're still going to play Stanford and USC and Navy, and that just doesn't give them the wiggle room to kind of fit in Michigan. So they're going to move around, probably add some different teams. And it's a great rivalry, like we said, but I think it's going to be interesting to see who else they can add on to the schedule. Maybe some teams Notre Dame doesn't have a history with, they can build one.
Yeah, I'm torn. I like playing Michigan. Mm-hmm. I would almost rather them get rid of Michigan State because, to me, Michigan is the more glamorous game.
Oh, I agree.
But I'm sad to see it go. I really am. And I'd love to hear your thoughts. So make sure you hit us up at irishimpact@spnt.tv. We'd love to hear to hear your feedback. So just hit us up. We're working on getting Ryan Ritter here from herloyalsons.com on the show. Give us a sec here. Be patient with us. Kev, let's look ahead to the Miami game. What are you looking forward to most about that game?
Attending it. I'm going. So my brother Sean and I are going to take the trip to Chicago. He lives in South Bend. I'll hook up with him there. We'll roll over to the Windy City. And I've never been over to Soldier Field, historic stadium. It'll be interesting to get to check it out. I'm pretty excited about it. I mean, again, I'm not that excited about these new uniforms they're wearing. They got that weird split helmet where the half of it's gold and the other half has the leprechaun on it. It's something interesting. I'm a kind of a traditional guy where I just like to rock the gold helmets with the blue, the simplicity and the glory of the Notre Dame uniforms. But, if the kids are into it, we'll go with it.
I'm looking forward to the Miami game as well. But now we finally got him on the line. It's Ryan Ritter from herloyalsons.com. You can also follow him on Twitter. He's at HLS_ND Tex. Hey, Ryan, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good. How are y'all doing?
We're doing well. We tried to hook up with you on Skype. Unfortunately, that didn't work, but we got you via telephone, and that's all that matters. I saw your post today on herloyalsons.com regarding the Michigan series, and you had some choice words. They weren't the most, I don't know. There were buts involved. We'll just leave it there. But I wanted to get your thoughts on Notre Dame dropping the series with Michigan, and what do you think that does for the Irish moving forward?
Well, I mean, there's initial disappointment for sure. I mean, everybody does look forward now that University of Michigan has been playing us for annually since the past decade or so. It has been an annual kind of tradition to look forward to now, even though there have been large periods of time where they have decided to flat out not schedule us. So it's going to be weird to move on without that. But even with that disappointment, there is somewhat of a vindication based on the history between the two schools that it was finally Notre Dame for once that kind of got to stick it to Michigan for a change. It was, and on that post that you were mentioning, some of the choice words came from the Michigan fans more than anything else. They were called, to put it politely, ND very pompous and arrogant in the politest terms I can. That we dropped the series when it's been their MO for years and years before.
So going forward, it's a huge rivalry as far as Notre Dame, especially regionally. But now, what would you like Notre Dame to do with that open date? I mean, obviously we know that they are going to have to make up some sort of something here with the 5 games with the ACC now moving forward. But you want to get another big time opponent either on the road or hopefully a home-and-home series. What would you like to see them do?
Well, really, if I have a preference of what I like to see them do, just because of my jealous nature, I'd definitely like them to schedule another game in the South, whether it's against the Texas or against a SEC team around here. Honestly, what I think is going to happen going forward is that initial date that's now freed up with Michigan is probably going to go to an ACC slot, would be my best wager. In fact, when the schedule starts around 2014, we're still going to have to add a couple more ACC schools in order to fill that out. So I think that's the initial move that Jack was thinking when he did that. And I also think going forward, I think you'll see Michigan and Notre Dame, despite all the moaning and the complaining and the outrage on whatever side you happen to stand on, I think they'll be back at the table sooner than most people think. And likely we won't see anything for 5 years with the 3-year cancellation that we have now and the 2-year hiatus that was already planned in. But I definitely think you'll see something going forward pretty soon. Probably not an annual series, but something where the Irish will face off against Michigan maybe once every 2 or 3 years.
Ryan, switching gears now for the 2012 season, going in now 4-0 into the bye week. What do you take away so far with this 4-0 start?
I think the biggest thing to take away is the defense has been the star, and Manti Te'o is all of a sudden the word Heisman's being thrown around with him now, and that's something as good as Te'o is that we did not expect at the beginning of the season. And we didn't really know what we were going to have on the defensive line with the departure of Aaron Lynch. And all of a sudden, you see Stephon Truitt stepping up. I saw an interesting stat today that in all 7 games he's played thus far, only in Maryland has he not had a sack. And he's pretty quickly making us forget that Lynch left a little bit of a hole in our line. Lewis Nix has also come up in a big way, and Captain Lewis Moore has provided the upperclassmen leadership, and you have Sheldon Day as a young freshman anchoring that line. And, of course, you got Teo as the absolute superstar, just running around everywhere now with 3 career interceptions all in this season. It's been fantastic to see. Now, as far as the offense goes, obviously those are where the big question marks are. I think what we're seeing right now from Golson is kind of what you would expect from a young freshman quarterback. The throws that he were making were some of the very same things that I would blast Tommy for last season. His first interception, he locked it to his receiver, made a very, very poor decision. And the second interception, he was just trying to make too much happen. And oddly enough, Reeves was the calming influence in that game. He made very short passes, made very smart decisions, and took care of the ball. So what I think we see going forward is Notre Dame is, for lack of a better term, you might see SEC-type football from Notre Dame. Somebody that's going to go after like LSU did. They did not have much of an offense. Just think back to the national title game where they couldn't cross the 50, but that got them to the national title game. I'm not saying Notre Dame's going to be in the national title by any means. I think we still got quite a bit to prove, but that's the type of defense that Brian Kelly has built.
Do you think it's justified at this point to have him in the top 10?
Very justified. And I was expecting that to happen as well. When you take down Michigan and Michigan State after the rankings, there's no other thing that you can do besides put the Irish in the top 10. It wouldn't make any sense otherwise. And Purdue was better than expected, even though they gave us more struggles than probably Irish fans would have wanted. They also have a very strong defensive front. I'm not saying you'll see them in the top 25 anytime soon, and even Michigan might be falling out of the top 25 permanently, depending on how the rest of their season goes. But when you start off 4-0, you win convincingly against Navy, you held on your home opener, and then when primetime hits, you held the state of Michigan to 0 touchdowns, and that's going to get noticed by anybody paying attention to football.
We're talking to Ryan Ritter of HerLoyalSons.com here on the Irish Impact podcast. Ryan, when you look forward to the next couple of weeks, we know obviously they're 4-0 now. They're ranked in the top 10 in one poll, very close in another. They're going into a very difficult stretch. What do you foresee as far as that? Let's just go at the next 4 games. They got some big name opponents. Where do you see them going forward?
Oh, really? The first thing, first and foremost, is you can't look past Miami. I don't think they're a very good team, despite what the Irish say. I don't think they believe that Miami is going to be a very tough test compared to what they have. But you've been 4-0. You just came off 2 of your toughest games when you're looking at the preseason. And now you come into a bye week. So now you got a week's worth of time plus to read your own press clippings, start to believe in your own hype. And that's been the message that Brian Kelly has been talking to with his team, that, you can't believe your own hype. And he was saying it well before this season. He was saying it last year, but now this is where that test is actually going to come. How are the Irish going to respond? That this is a team that another top team, Kansas State, absolutely blew the doors off of. So what you want to see is you want to see the Irish get their offense back on track. You want to see them have a winning in a very convincing fashion and not watch the offense sputter, and make sure the defense is still able to keep up their great performance thus far. And then looking forward past that, you obviously have huge tests coming up in Stanford and OU. Stanford is probably it's hard for me personally to gauge where they are, because I thought they had a huge loss in Andrew Luck, and I thought that was going to greatly change the complexion of that team, especially considering now you're a couple of years off of Harbaugh as well. And, they show up and they beat USC. And I don't know how many people really saw that coming, to be honest. I sure didn't. I know Twilby, who does our national game of the week, he picked USC and also picked them to cover the spread as well. And nobody was disagreeing with them. And so Stanford has made a lot of noise, and they're a force to be reckoned with. And Oklahoma, they've struggled. They just dropped one this past week. They struggled at the beginning of the season against UTEP. Landry Jones is not looking like the Landry Jones of last season. And the wide receiver suspensions that hit the Sooners in the offseason are finally looking like they're catching up to OU. Now, that's still the concern there is that our secondary, while they have, I think they played absolutely fantastic these last 2 games. OU still has a good passing offense, and if Landry Jones can figure it out and put it back together, that could cause some serious problems for the Irish going forward.
With the offensive line kind of struggling thus far, I mean, it's 3 different guys have gotten reps at the running back position. They can't seem to figure out who they want to lean on the most. I mean, what do you take from that?
Well, really, and the biggest thing right now, and it seems to me just from the eye test, and I want to go back and look at some more film and to confirm this, but the interior is struggling, and unfortunately, the person that seems to be easiest to put the blame on is Golick. It seems that he's having all kinds of trouble, and defenses are keying in on that gigantic hole that he seems to be leaving just about every play. If you look at where our running success has actually been, it's been from our running backs making cuts. There hasn't been a whole lot of, say, for the Navy game, blowing people off the line and being able just to dive straight forward. There's always been a cut involved. We've had to go to the outside because our exterior line plus our tight ends have been doing a pretty decent job blocking. As far as which running back to lean on, I still think there might be a little bit of rust on Sierra Wood being out for 2 games. He's had some flashes where he looks like the 1,000-yard rusher we saw last year, but Riddick has stepped up in a huge way, and as much as it pains me to say anybody that's followed us and some of the debates we have with our student reporter, Grant Landex, he kind of called this one. He thought Theo was going to step up and take Sierra's spot, and right now it looks like he's very close, if not has already done that. So I think that maybe who you see going forward, that's who Brian Kelly trusted the ball with at the very end, and he iced the game for us against Michigan. So I think you'll see Riddick probably getting more snaps, Sierra also trying to get back up to speed. And as far as GA3 goes, that's going to be your big change-up X factor, trying to get something stretched to the outside or possibly a jet sweep reverse type play.
We're talking to Ryan. I don't know why I have a hard time with that name. Ryan Ritter of HerLoyalSons.com here on Irish Impact. And Ryan, earlier in the show, I talked with my co-host here, Kevin, about the most surprising position group so far this year through 4 games. I said that it has to be the play of the secondary. Would you agree?
Yes, I would definitely agree with that, especially considering that right in the middle of everything that was going on during Michigan State, you had Slaughter go down, and that was supposed to be the backbone of the secondary. He would be the one to clean up some of the mistakes around, and really the young kids have stepped up. It's been quite awesome to see. Now, granted, we have faced a new quarterback in Maxwell, and Denard Robinson, we've been saying it for years, many Irish fans, he is a very, very overrated passer. And we saw that. The throws he was making, once our guys just were able to look and find the ball and actually have proper coverage, he wasn't able to do anything against the Irish through the air. So the real test is going to be what happens when we hit those offenses, like an OU where Landry Jones, if he happens to put it together with his wide receiver core, what are we going to do when Matt Barkley, a preseason Heisman front runner, while he has struggled, he is definitely not an awful quarterback, and both him and Robert Woods have still shown that they can pick defenses apart. So, yes, it's been surprising. I'm not sure whether to start jumping up and down with praise or to still be kind of concerned, but it's definitely been a very pleasant surprise to watch them step up. And the biggest one is Schumett, and his play at nickelback has been absolutely superb, and he shined during Michigan State, and he shined again during Michigan. So I expect him to keep going forward, and he may just push for one of those first 2 corner spots at this rate.
We're heading into the bye week now, and then they have another game, a national spotlight, when they go into Chicago to take on Miami. I got to get your take on those uniforms.
Well, I have 2 very distinct opinions on the uniform. And, you know, the first thing I saw when I was able to get a preview of it, I was able to see the jersey and the pants and that whole look. I'm like, oh, this actually doesn't look very bad. And then there was the helmet. And that helmet is just – it makes no sense to me. There's probably some 18-year-old kids that I think it's the greatest thing ever. It looks too much like Maryland for my taste, and I'm actually pretty liberal as far as Notre Dame fans go in changing the uniform, but I definitely think you don't need to stray too far from the helmet. And the one thing I said is, you know, maybe if they went all blue with the leprechaun design on the helmet, that it would actually have looked good. And I think your design is in deep trouble if you say, well, that helmet would look better if there wasn't a speck of gold on it. So I think that was kind of a failure there. The actual jersey, I think, looks great. I like the change up in the font and the numbers. It looks real nice. I like the dark blue. The pants, I initially liked a lot more until somebody pointed out to me, hey, that pant only has one stripe on it on one side. And, again, that's just a weird asymmetrical thing that doesn't make sense to me as far as the uniform design goes. But, you know, all in all, it's one game. We will use it for one game and hopefully quickly forget about it and cross our fingers that the next Shamrock Series game, Adidas kind of doesn't mess with the helmet too much and goes a little bit more conservative on the uniform designs.
Ryan, I want to say thanks for joining us here on Irish Impact. Tell everybody out there about Her Loyal Sons and where they can find you.
Yes, thank you very much for having me.
All right, that's Ryan Ritter of HerLoyalSons.com. Check him out. You can also follow him on Twitter. He's at HLS_NDTex. Big thanks to Ryan for joining us here this week on Irish Impact.
Yeah, I mean, right there. I mean, the last thing we talked about is the uniforms. I mean, it's the same thing we've all been echoing on the program here. No one's really a fan.
No, I'm not a fan, but, money talks. And
yeah. Like he kind of said, he shared my opinion where he said, if the kids are into it, then let them wear it. I guess
that's
one
really all that matters. So this weekend, no game for the Irish, the bye week, and then they head to Chicago. You're going to be there.
Looking forward to
You're
it.
excited,
yeah.
obviously. Yeah. Your second trip to the Windy City in, 4 weeks?
Yeah, about in a month. It'll be, yeah.
Why don't you just move there?
Well, I've never been until I went 2 weeks ago, and now I'm going right back. But, I usually go to one Notre Dame game a year, and it's usually at a home game at Notre Dame Stadium. But I had an opportunity to attend this one. I've never been to Soldier Field. It's a no-brainer for me.
I'd rather go to South Bend. Then again, you've been there.
Maybe I get spoiled for getting to go so often.
Right. I've only been there one time. That's just me. Hopefully, maybe if there are any listeners out there that want to donate a ticket to me, that'd be nice.
Now it's
not going to happen.
Now it's just getting sad.
I know that might be our cue to wrap things up here on the podcast. So yeah, no game this weekend. We're going to try and get to you guys next week. I'm going to be traveling, so we'll try and get it figured out. We may have a show on Monday, maybe not, but we'll see. Hopefully we can do it. But if not, Kev, have a good week, and we'll talk next week.
All right, win one for the Gipper.
Absolutely. That's going to wrap up episode 6 of Irish Impact. Irish Impact is an SPNT production. For more information about our other podcasts, log on to spnt.tv. For my co-host, Kevin Wernert, I'm Nick Suberling. We'll see you next time on Irish Impact. Irish Impact is an SPNT production. For more information about our other podcasts, log on to spnt.tv.